Hi class, in this video we'll go over chapter 3 in your textbook, so the supply demand chapter. This is one of the more important chapters in the entire book because many of your future chapters are all based on supply demand, so make sure you take this carefully, and if you have any question, let me know. Okay, all right, so let's get started. So we have this picture here. It shows, a picture of organic food. And if you look at what the production process is, many of the organic production is actually really close to where the actual market is. But while the regular, the non-organic food actually produce very, very far away and usually are imported from other countries. So the question becomes that because you had to import those food from very far away, but they're actually cheaper than the organic food, which are produced very locally. So that shouldn't be, because the locally produced food should have a lower transportation cost, and therefore we should see a lower price on the locally produced organic food. But the reason why the organic food are actually more expensive is actually to do with our supply demand. Because if you just look at how much the cost for production is, that's on the demand side of the market. But don't forget, that's on the supply side of the market. But don't forget about the demand side of the market, right? So maybe because everybody wants organic food, there's a higher demand for it, and therefore we see a higher price for it, right? So really the idea of the market price is not decided by either demand or supply. The market price is actually decided between the interactions of both the demand and supply together. All right, so first let's look at our demand. So know what's the demand? So demand is amount of goods and service the consumers are willing to purchase at different price level. That's called a demand. And then it's very similar to our quantity demanded. So that's the total number of unit of goods and service the consumers are willing able to purchase at each price level. That's our quantity demanded. And I also know what's the law of demand. So law of demand says holding everything else constant, so nothing else change. But if the price goes up, so getting more expensive, then our quantity demanded goes down. And then if the price goes down, so getting cheaper, then our quantity demanded goes up. Now, to put it in a simpler term, it just means that holding everything constant, so same price, same color, same location, same quality, if the good is getting more expensive, we're going to buy less of it. But if it's getting cheaper, we're going to buy more of it. So that's pretty much common sense, right? So everything we buy, if it's cheaper, we buy more. If it's expensive, we're going to buy less. And that's our law of demand. And also know what's a demand schedule. So it's a table shows you between the price of the good and then the quantity demanded of the good. So imagine if we draw a table, putting price on the left and putting quantity demanded on the right, and then at each price level, how much is our quantity demanded, right? So something like this, that's a 7. That will be called a demand schedule. Now, a demand curve is a graphical representation of our demand schedule. So for the demand curve, let me show you what it looks like. So this diagram here, notice over here we have our price and then quantity demanded, right? So this table here, that will be our demand schedule. But once you graph this, so we're going to put this on the 2-dimensional panel, and then it's always price on the vertical axis and then quantity on the horizontal axis. So once you plot your demand curve according to the price and quantity demanded, and then connecting all the points you have, then this line is called our demand curve. And notice that our demand curve here is a downward sloping line, so which means that this will have a negative slope. And the reason why it has a negative slope is because of our law of demand. So law of demand guaranteed that there is an inverse relationship between the price of the good and then the quantity demanded, and therefore you're going to see this downward sloping demand curve. Okay, so demand curve is always downward sloping. And next, let's look at our supply. So supply by definition is the amount of good the producers want to produce at different price level. And I also know what is our law of supply. So law of supply is actually inverse of our law of demand. So law of supply says when the price goes up, getting more expensive, the quantity supplied will also goes up. And if the price goes down, getting cheaper, then quantity supplied also goes down. So it's inverse of our law of demand. And the reason why that is because think about the supply side, think about the companies. The companies, their goal is to maximize profit, right? That's how much money they can earn at the end of the day. So holding every sales constant, especially holding the cost constant, if the price goes up, and if the company can sell this good at a higher price level, they're going to make a bigger profit. And they're going to have more incentive to produce this goods and services. Right? So let's suppose that I run a business, and let's suppose I produce chicken fried rice, nothing else, just chicken fried rice. And let's say my cost for each order chicken fried rice is $3. And let's say tomorrow I can sell my chicken fried rice for $25. Man, that is great, right? That means it only cost me $3. I can sell for $25. Then I have a $22 profit. And what do I want to do? I want to produce more chicken fried rice. That will make me more profit in the process. But what if it's the other way around? That what if my cost is still $3, but my price, how much I can sell this for, is actually going to be $3.25. Well, that's not good, right? That means now I can sell for $3.25, but it cost me $3, so my profit is only 25 cents. That was the point, right? So I'm wasting all this time and I'm only making 25 cents profit. Then I don't want to make chicken fried rice anymore. I might want to make like I don't know, a beef fried rice or shrimp fried rice, right? So how much the price is, holding every sales constant, will give companies different incentive to produce more or less. And that's really all depends on how much the profit is. Okay, also known as supply schedule. So supply schedule is very similar to our demand schedule, but now we're showing between the prices and also the quantity supplied. And then your supply curve is a graphical representation of our supply schedule, right? So if you look at this little graph here, diagram here, notice we have the price, quantity, price, quantity. So if you put these numbers into a table, that will be your supply schedule. As I will show, so let me draw a line here. Oh, that looks bad. I'm sorry, guys. So price over here, quantity supplied here, and this will be our supply schedule. Now for the supply curve, so if you plot all the points on the diagram, and notice how we also have the price on the vertical axis, we have the quantity supply on the horizontal axis, right? So plot the points, you see this line here that's going upward, that's going to be our supply curve, right? So your supply curve has a positive slope because of the law of supply. So so at this point you should know that demand curve is always going down because of law of demand. Supply curve is always going up because of the law of supply. So different motive involved. All right, so next, equilibrium, right? So if you're putting your supply demand curve together, so your demand is always going down, supply is always going up. That means eventually they're going to meet. So this intersection between our supply demand curve is called an equilibrium. Now, at the equilibrium, you're going to see some very special property. And then the most important one is that at equilibrium, your quantity demanded for the good is equal to the quantity supplied for the good. So this is a very, very important condition. So at this intersection between our supply demand curve, so let's draw a simple diagram here, right? So price on the vertical axis, quantity on the horizontal, we have the demand curve always going down, and now the supply curve always going up. So this intersection here, that is called equilibrium. And then at the equilibrium, your quantity supplied is always equal to the quantity demanded. That means however much that companies want to produce will be all purchased by the consumers, and however much the consumer want to buy will be all supplied and produced by the companies. And also at the equilibrium, so at this intersection, that's when we know what the price is going to be for the market, and that's called the equilibrium price, and then what the quantity is going to be for the market. So this price, let's use different color. So this price here, that is going to be our equilibrium price, and this quantity here, that's going to be our equilibrium quantity. So that's how the price and quantity are determined in the market. Now, however, anytime if you're not at equilibrium, so if your actual market price is above equilibrium, so if it's above this line, so anywhere in this area, we're going to see a surplus. And then if it's anywhere below this line, so somewhere below, let's say this area here, we're going to see a shortage in the market. Okay, so above, so too expensive, we're going to see surpluses. That means there are more quantities supplied than our quantity demand. And then if your price is cheaper, very, very cheap, then I'm going to see more quantity demanded than quantity supplied, and that's called a shortage. All right, so this looks just like what we just draw, right? So your equilibrium is determined at the intersection between your supply-demand curve, and that's where the market price is going to be, the equilibrium price, and that's where the market quantity is going to be, so equilibrium quantity. And then anywhere above it, you're going to see a surplus, right? So let's suppose right now the price is at 180. So what's going to happen at 180? According to your supply curve at 180, so that's going to be about, what is like 700, right? So at 180, our company is going to supply 700. But on the demand side, at 180, that's right here on the demand curve, that's going to be 500. So companies will produce 700, consumers only purchase 500, then we got a problem here. That means we're going to have about 200 units that's currently left unsold, and that's called a surplus. So the difference between your quantity supplied minus your quantity demand, that's going to be the surplus for the market. Now, vice versa, if the price is too low, you're going to see something very similar but reversed. So price too low, so let's say the price is going to be, let me erase all this, guys. So let's suppose the price is going to be right here at 120. At 120, on the demand curve, our quantity demand is 700. And on the supply curve, our quantity supply, that looks like what, 650 maybe, right? So 650. I'm sorry, 550. 550 here. So the quantity demand is 700. The quantity supply is only 500. So quantity demand is more than quantity supply. Then we have a shortage in the market, right? So anywhere above, you're going to see a surplus. Anywhere below, you're going to see a shortage for the market. And also known as a ceteris paribus. So ceteris paribus is the Latin. It means holding everything else constant. So you know how people always tell you to think outside the box, right? So, but for this chapter, don't. For this chapter, I want you guys to stay in the box. And also for this chapter, you have a tiny box to stay inside of. So whenever you're thinking about any questions, then the only thing that's changing in the conditions are the information given to you in the question. Everything else that's not mentioned, assume they remain constant, right? That's what is called ceteris paribus, everything else equal. So let's suppose that I'm asking you if the price for ice cream goes down, do you buy more, do you buy less? Then the only thing you think about is the price of ice cream. Assume nothing else changes. So don't think like, what is the weather outside? Or what is the flavor for the ice cream? Don't worry about it. Assume everything else the same. But if the only thing that can change is the price of the good, then how do you change your behavior? Do you buy more? Do you buy less? And that condition, holding everything else constant, that's called ceteris paribus. So another way to look at the demand curve, we can use the demand curve to show how much good the consumer is able to purchase at different price level. And that's what we're doing with demand curve, right? So for this little very simple demand curve here, when the price level is at P0, our quantity demanded on the demand curve will be showing at Q0. But we can also use our demand curve and also supply curve to illustrate any type of changes that might have an impact on the market. So let's suppose for our simple demand curve here, let's suppose the consumer income changed and consumer income become higher. So people make more money now. And how would that change our demand for different things? And in most situations, if consumer making more money, they have more income to spend, they have a higher ability to buy the good, and you're going to see a more demand for this good. So now at a P0, our quantity demanded is increased from Q0 to Q1. So, and this will be happening at every price level. So when the income increases, we're going to see that for most normal good, you're going to see a higher demand for this good. So demand curve will be shifted to the right. So we're going to use this demand shifter to illustrate any changes in demand. So anytime if you see an increase in demand, we're going to be shifting our demand curve to the right, right? So from D0 to D1, that's an increase in demand. But anytime if you see a decrease in demand, we're going to be shifting to the left, and that's called a decrease in demand. Now, I know you guys want to think this as a, if increasing, you want to shift it higher, and decrease, you want to shift it lower. Demand shifter is not higher and lower shift. Demand shifter and also supply shifter is that anytime if it's increasing, you go to the right. And anytime it's decreasing, you go to the left. So it's a left and right shift. So there are 5 factors that can cause a shift in our demand. So there are income, change of taste for preferences, change of composition of population. So this will be either more or less buyers in the market. Next, the price of related good. So if it's a substitute or complement, that might change. And last one will be the change in our expectation for the future, right? So how much our consumer expect the future will change will impact our current demand level, right? So this 5 factor here will shift our demand curve. So let's look at how they will shift. So anytime if your taste for something is increased, you have more population, your income increases, and this is normal good. Price of a substitute is getting more expensive, or price of a complement is falling, so cheaper. And lastly, if you expect the future prices might be more expensive, then this factor changes. You're going to be shifting your demand curve to the right. That's an increase in demand. And then vice versa, if it's decreasing, you are shifting to the left. Okay, so a couple more definitions. So what's a normal and inferior good. So normal good means income goes up, you buy more, that's normal good. And an inferior good is that income goes up, you buy less, that's inferior good. So for inferior good, think about everything in the dollar store or those great value brand at Walmart, right? So if you make more money, you're not going to buy the dollar store anymore. You buy, name brand good, right? So income goes up, you buy more, that's normal good. But if something like not so good, that you're going to buy less of it, you can be, if your income goes higher, you can buy better of something else, then that will be called an inferior good. And also know what's a substitute and complement. So substitute is that you buy one, you don't buy the other one. That's called substitute. And then complement is that we buy them together. When they're sold separately, they're called complements, right? So for substitute, think about like an iPhone and Samsung Galaxy, right? We buy one, we don't buy the other one. And then for complement, think about like maybe shampoo, conditioners, toothpaste, toothbrush. Those will be complements, right? So you buy them together, even though they're sold separately. We can also use the supply curve to represent what the producers are behaving in, how the producers are behaving in the market. Think about what is the goal for the companies, right? So which is to maximize profit. So for every price, how much the good and service the company are willing to produce will be determined by, what the cost is and how much is the profit the company want to earn. So imagine you had this simple diagram here, and we have our price indicator over here and a quantity over here. But imagine for this price level, part of the price might be how much the cost is. And then the other part of the price, above that, that's how much the profit is, right? So really this price, how much you pay for good and service, will include how much the cost it will cost to produce it, and also how much the profit the company will earn, right? So again, let's go back to my little business of chicken fried rice. Let's suppose my cost is $3. I can sell the rice for $5. Then when consumer pay the $5, $3 go to my cost, and then the other $2, that's my profit, right? So really how much you pay for the good will equal to how much the cost is and plus how much the profit is. But imagine if the cost went up. Now for any company, if your cost goes up, that's bad for business, right? So if your cost goes up, let's suppose the cost goes way high. So this is the new cost now. And now in order to have the same level of profit, we must raise the price, right? So let's say go back to my example again. So before my cost for each order chicken fried rice is $3, and let's suppose now each cost will be $6. So in order to have the same $2 profit, I have to raise the price. So before it was $5 for each order chicken fried rice, but now to have the same profit, I need to charge $8 for each order chicken fried rice. So when the price goes up, and when the cost goes up, price goes up along with it. So what that does is that you're going to see the supply curve shifting a little higher, right? So this what I want you guys to remember, that don't think this as a up and down shift. I know it looks like an up shift, right? So this sounds horrible. So, but still, I don't want you to think this as an up and down shift. I want you to think this as a left and right shift. So between your supply demand curve, if it doesn't matter which one it is, right? So if it's increasing, we're shifting to the right, and decreasing, we're shifting to the left. So notice that at the same price level, we go from this point to this point over here. So that's a shifting to the left, and that's a decreasing of our supply. So cost goes up, that's bad for companies, and supply will be decreased. Okay, so if it's increasing, then you're going to be shifting to the right, and decreasing, you are shifting to the left. That's a decreasing. Okay. All right, so just what we mentioned in the previous slide. So if supply is decreased, we're going to be shifting to the left. That is very important, not down, not up, but left, right? So the supply is decreasing, shifting to the left, and supply is increasing, we're shifting to the right. So again, this is only a left and right shift, not a up and down shift. All right, so there will be 4 factors that can change our supply or shift our supply. So anytime you have a natural condition change, so a drought or flood, right, that will definitely impact your supply. If you have a change in your input price, so that's just another fancy word for cost. So anytime if your cost change, that will shift your supply curve to you. Technology. Now we don't mean the technology in the actual product, in the actual product. We mean the technology in the production of the product, right? So imagine again for my chicken fried rice, that will be the production technologies. Whenever that change, that have an impact on my supply. So let's say I have more robotics, I have more tools, stoves to produce my chicken fried rice, and that will cause a change in supply. And lastly will be government policies, right? So this will be government regulations that will have an impact on the supply. So imagine the government says, hey, that chicken fried rice is bad for the environment. You better produce less of it. And that will cause a decrease in our supply. Okay, so these 4 factors here will cause a shift in our supply curve. If it's decreasing, we're shifting to the left. If it's increasing, again, we're shifting to the right. Okay. All right, we just mentioned this in front of the previous slide. So again, just a summary. Every time it's increasing, so something good for the company happens, we're going to be shifting to the right. And then anytime decreases, we're going to be shifting to the left, right? So something good to the right, something bad to the left. So whenever there's a change in the supply demand of the market, we can use this diagram to determine what kind of impact on the price and quantity that those changes have on our market. So there are 4 steps to follow. So first step, you want to draw the supply demand diagram with no change. And second, you want to ask yourself, would this be a demand change or supply change? Third, you want to decide if this will be a left shift or a right shift. And lastly, draw the line and then determine what the new equilibrium is, and then compare the price and quantity. Okay, so again, first draw the line, just draw the diagram. Second, ask yourself, is the demand change or supply change? Third, draw a new line to see if it's shifting right or left. And lastly, compare the new equilibrium to the old equilibrium to see how the price and quantity have changed. So let's do have an example here. So let's suppose the question says, how did the excellent weather condition during summer affect the quantity and price of salmon? So this is a good thing, right? So excellent weather condition. So you're going to ask yourself, so let's first draw a diagram. So let's draw a blank diagram. So we have our supply and we have our demand. And let's also show the original price. So let's call this one P0. And let's show our original quantity, and this will be Q0, right? So now let's show that our 4 steps. Now, first step's already finished. We draw the diagram. Second step, would this be a demand change or supply change? So this is the weather change. So this will be impacting our supply. So we know this will be a supply change. And then ask yourself, is it something good happen to the supply or bad happen to the supply? Well, the question says, excellent weather. So you know this is a good, something good happened, right? So supply going to show an increase. An increase of supply, we're going to be shifting our supply curve to the right, right? So that's the second step. Third step, let's draw the new line. So we're going to show our supply curve shifting to the right. Let's call this S2. Now notice we have a new equilibrium now. So for this new equilibrium, we're going to have a price. Let's call this one P2. We have a quantity of Q2, right? So, and then last step, let's compare price and quantities. So price, compare P0 to P2, price is going down. And then quantity from Q0 to Q2, quantity is going up, right? So the answer is price will decrease. Oh, that's a P, not a D. And then quantity will increase. Okay, so 4 steps. First, draw the diagram. Second, ask yourself, this is supply change or demand change. And next, draw a new line, either left or right. And lastly, compare the equilibriums to see if it's increasing or decreasing. Okay. All right. So let's try this one. Now I know the answer is already here, so I want you to ignore this, right? So let's draw the diagram first. Draw the diagram. So supply, demand. And let's call this one P1. And let's call this one Q1. All right, notice what I did. Like even before I read the question, I gotta draw a diagram, right? So do this for every question. Before you do anything, draw the diagram. All right, so the question says, from 2004 to 2012, the share of Americans who report obtaining their news from digital source increased from 24% to 39%. Using the 4-step approach, how has this affected consumption of traditional source, so traditional source, such as print news medias, radios, and television news? All right, so what we see here is that people are consuming more from digital sources, right? So internet, phones, mobile phones. So between the digital source and then the traditional source, this is a substitute good, right? So we consume one, we don't consume other one. So we know this will be a demand change. So when there are more people consuming digital source, which means because they're a substitute good, then we're going to see less number of people consuming the traditional source. We're going to see a lower demand, so demand will be decreased, and this will be a left shift, right? So let's draw a new line. So demand shifting to the left, D2, and then we'll have a new equilibrium, P2, and a new quantity of Q2, right? So it looks like the price is decreasing, quantity is decreasing. Got it? Yeah, so 4 steps. Again, draw the diagram before you read the question. Second, determine if there's a demand change or supply change. And next, think about is the increase or decrease, and draw a new line left or right. And lastly, compare the new price and then the new quantity. Okay. All right. So guys, for this question here, I will leave it to yourself. So you can try this on your own. And then if you get it right, that's great. If you get it wrong, then have any question, ask me. Okay. All right. Let's look at next one. So what happens if you have two of the changes happening together? That you see how complex this diagram is. So when you have two changes happening together, then there will be some mixed result. Let me give you a shortcut that will help you in your life. So whenever you're going to see a supply increase, so supply increase, then you're going to see the price going down, so P going down, and then quantity going up. Now, whenever you see a supply decrease, then you're going to see a price going up and then quantity going down. Now, if you see a demand increase, there will be a price going up and quantity going up. If you see a demand decrease, there will be a price going down and then quantity going down. All right, so if you know this for shortcut, you don't have to draw the diagram anymore. But also if you have a situation like this, that you have two change combined together, if you know this for shortcut, you can see what the answer is, right? So let's suppose we have a change of supply decrease and then demand decrease. So let me use my highlighter. Which one's the highlighter? Here's my highlighter. All right, so we're gonna see a supply decrease. Ooh, that's a terrible color. Here we go. Supply decrease, and we're also gonna see a demand decrease. Now, guys, if you combine these two change together, notice how the quantity is going in the same direction. So quantity for sure will decrease. But for the price over here, we have price going up, we have price going down, right? So they're mixed message here. So what is the final result? Now, I know some of you guys want to say, hey, they cancel each other out. So the final result is price stay constant. It doesn't change. Well, not necessarily, because the question didn't tell you which one changed more, right? So if your supply changed more, then price will increase. If your demand changed more, price will decrease. And then if they change by the same amount, then price will remain constant. But without knowing which one changed more, the end result for price is that we don't know, right? It's a question mark. That's supposed to be a question mark. Let me try this. So the answer is we just don't know, because we don't know which one changed more. If you know which one changed more, then you know how the price changed. But otherwise, we just don't know how much the price will change, right? So so in the answer choices, you're going to see something like, quantity will go down, but the change in price will be ambiguous, and that means we're just not sure. Okay. All right. Also know the difference between a movement and a shift. So anytime if only the price of the good change, you are not shifting the line anymore. So if only the price change, then you are moving from one point to the next point on the same line, right? So from point A to point B, and that happens when only you have a price change. Anything else happens, those factors for demand, factor for supply, you're going to be shifting your supply demand curve. But if it's only the price change, then you are moving on the same supply demand curve. All right, so next, let's talk about government policy. So there are two type of policies that can control and influence our price. They're called a price ceiling and a price floor. So price ceiling is the legal maximum price on a good and service. A price floor is the legal minimum price on a good and service. So one example for price ceiling, think something like a rent control. So I know that in most part of the country you don't have it, but if you go to New York City, go to Seattle, go to California, many places have something called a rent control, where the government step in, actually set what the maximum rent is for the market. That's called rent control. Price floor, something like a minimum wage, there will be a price floor. So the lowest wage or the lowest pay the company can pay you, that's the floor for the market. That's called a price floor. Okay, so again, ceiling is the legal maximum, floor is legal minimum. Now, when you have a price ceiling, price floor, where the ceiling and floor is can have very different impact on the market. So let's say we have, let me use a new example. Let's suppose we have my chicken fried rice business, right? So let's suppose right now, currently, between supply and demand for the market, for each order of chicken fried rice, let's call this $5, and then we have a quantity of, let's say, 20 order of chicken fried rice. Now, let's suppose tomorrow government says, we're going to introduce a new legal maximum for chicken fried rice. So for each order chicken fried rice, I can only sell for $3. We got a problem now, right? Because our old price of $5 is no longer legal, right? So because $3 is the maximum now, so we had to go down to $3. But going down to $3 on the demand curve at a lower price, our consumers want to buy more chicken fried rice, but at $3 I make less profit, then companies want to produce less chicken fried rice. Then this gap is the shortage for chicken fried rice, because consumers want to buy 15, but a consumer want to buy 30, but company only produce 15 of it. So whenever the price ceiling is too low, you're going to see a shortage for the market. But if your price ceiling is above, so let's suppose government says the new legal maximum for chicken fried rice is going to be $10. Now, what kind of impact would this have on the market? So currently, we sell for $5. But tomorrow, government says the legal maximum I can sell is going to be $10. So would this cause the price to change to $10? It wouldn't. Because remember, $10 is our legal maximum. As long as you're operating below the maximum, you're doing okay. You don't have to change, right? Think this like a speed limit. So if you drive under the speed limit, you're doing fine. You don't have to change. But if you're going above the speed limit, then you have to slow down now. You have to go down to where the limit is. So the speed limit is very similar to our price ceiling. So when the ceiling is above, when the requirement is very, very high, it's okay. We're doing fine because we're operating below the maximum, right? But if the limit is very low, then we're going to change accordingly, okay? Now for the price floor, it will be very similar, but it's reversed now. So for the price floor, if your floor is below, then this has no impact whatsoever, right? So imagine right now that we're paying our workers $10 per hour. And then tomorrow, government says the new minimum wage is $5 per hour. Well, that's fine, right? That wouldn't impact our business because we're already paying people more than the minimum wage. But if your minimum wage is set above it, then this will cause a change for the market. Right? So if minimum wage is set at $15, that means the current wage of $10 is no longer legal. We have to go up to our new minimum wage, right? So when the price floor is set below, it has no impact. When the price floor is set above, it will cause a price change. All right, so also know what's the surplus. So consumer surplus is the difference between how much the consumers are willing to pay minus how much consumer actually pay for this good. So let's think about what this consumer surplus actually measures. right? So let's suppose that you are very, very hungry. You go to my business for chicken fried rice, and right now you are willing to pay $10 for the chicken fried rice. But you look at the menu, the actual price for it is only $5. Hey, that's great, right? So you are willing to pay 10, but the actual price is 5. So you actually save little money here, right? So that difference between how much you're willing to pay versus how much the actual price is, you are actually saving from the transaction. That's called a consumer surplus. So consumer surplus measures our consumer saving. So the goal for each individual consumer is to maximize our consumer surplus. And on the diagram, your consumer surplus, so if you draw the supply demand diagram, so that's your demand, and this is your supply. So your consumer surplus will be below your demand curve and then above the price line. So this blue triangle, that's your consumer surplus. And then for the producer surplus, this is the difference between how much the producers are willing to accept versus how much they can actually sell this good for. So imagine I sell my chicken fried rice and I'm thinking, hey, this chicken fried rice cost me $3. And with everything involved, I'm willing to sell this for $4. But the actual price for it, hey, it's $5. That's great. I'm selling above than what my actual price, my cost. So that difference is my profit. So another way to call this producer surplus is just the profit for companies. So the goal for company is actually try to maximize profit, which is also our producer surplus. And lastly, as the entire economy, our goal is to maximize either a social surplus, economic surplus, total surplus. They all mean the same thing, right? So as the economy, we're going to try to maximize this, and this equals to the sum of your consumer surplus plus the producer surplus. So we try to maximize the total of the two, okay? And lastly, that we lost. So anytime if your market cannot achieve this efficiency, so anytime you're operating away from equilibrium, you're going to see some losses in the market, and that's called a dead weight loss. So another way to put it is anytime you might have a restriction in the market that prevent the market from achieving the efficiency, then that loss of efficiency, that's our dead weight loss. Okay, so let's look at our price ceiling again. So we have a price ceiling. Let's say price ceiling over here. That's your price ceiling, right? So if that's your price ceiling, then your consumer surplus will be below the demand curve and then above your price line. So that area, that's your consumer surplus. And your producer surplus will be the triangle below. That's your producer surplus. And notice we have a extra little triangle here. This triangle that represent how much our dead weight loss is. Because with no price ceiling, so before price ceiling, so supply demand, and right here, that's our consumer surplus. Over here is our producer surplus. And then altogether is our total surplus. So notice that for before the price ceiling, we have the entire big triangle. But now with the price ceiling, we only have this little trapezoid, right? So we don't have the black triangle anymore. So the black triangle, that's the inefficiency. And then the reason why that happens, because with the price control, either a ceiling or floor, there will be some transaction that could happen before, but because of price ceiling or price floor, they couldn't happen anymore. And those lasting transactions, they're called a dead weight loss. All right, so again, your triangle F, that's your consumer surplus. Triangle G is your producer surplus. And then together, the big triangle, that's your total surplus, economic surplus, social surplus. They all mean the same thing. Okay, so the goal for consumers is to maximize our consumer surplus, goal for producer to maximize our producer surplus, and the goal for the economy is to maximize the total between our consumer and producer surplus. All right, so if you're looking for the debt weight loss, so with the price ceiling, your consumer surplus, like we mentioned, will be the area T, and then area V, that's your consumer surplus. Your producer surplus will be the area X, and then your debt weight loss will be the area U, and then area W. So that's what we had before, but now with the price ceiling, we don't have it anymore. And then for the price floor, your consumer surplus is the area G, your producer surplus is the area H and then area I, and then your debt weight loss will be the area J and then area K. Okay, so anytime if you have a price control, either a ceiling or a floor, then if it causes a change in the market, this will also cause some inefficiency in the market. Okay. All right, guys, that's it for this chapter. Any question, let me know, and I will see you guys for next chapter. All right, bye-bye.